From the shallow layers that grace the hull of a passing starship at warp to the unchartable unknown depths where cosmic beings lurk of unfathomable ability, subspace is divided up into many layers and realms. Hi all, Rick here, and let's look at these known layers and the strangeness at play. Okay, so you need to bear in mind that subspace is weird. On one hand, it acts a lot like a sort of EM radiation that we are all familiar with, radio waves, signals and so on, an effect that can be generated on different frequencies. But then there are definitive subspace layers too, which are basically like alternate dimensions, complete realms and universes that are separate from real space-time by some metaphysical barrier. Basically, the shallower and closer to real space that subspace is, the more it is bound by the laws of physics and more intangible and discrete in its effects. The deeper you go, the more physical it becomes and the more extreme the realms. Notably, they're not alternate timelines or universes though. However, you can use subspace to traverse to such places, which suggests that the same subspace permeates across multiple realities. For example, subspace singularities generated by the Borg led to Species 8472's realm of fluidic space. Time is also more malleable in subspace. All this to say that subspace acts as a carrier medium for a signal or can be thought of as an entirely separate realm. A good analogy might be water. We can harness it and run it through taps of our own creation that are decidedly a part of our world. But there is also an ocean, a vast stretch of water of varying depths that may as well be a separate world altogether. So first off, we have the subspace effects that can be generated by common devices in regular space-time. These can be considered the shallowest layers of subspace and are often temporary zones or areas created around objects. There are certain types of force field that can form a subspace barrier. The Borg used an element of this in their shielding, and even Starfleet has had devices to shield against certain radiation types. For all intents and purposes, these are such minor subspace effects that they hardly count, besides the tech at play using subspace. The next layer down is the functional level. I define this as the layers that most communications are broadcast through. This layer is a mess of subspace communications, each at differing frequencies as interstellar societies message each other and share information. It's probable that the long-range communications require deeper subspace penetration. We can occasionally see rifts or openings into this layer, but such occurrences are usually very short-lived, as they are so close to regular space-time that, well, the laws of physics demand compliance and collapse them. There are beings that reside in this layer, however, such as the Myrigian 7 beings that dwelt in the lower atmosphere of that planet, but in subspace. Non-corporeal, they only communicated through the subspace interfaces operating in their reachable wavelengths. We may also have this as home to the wisps we see in Enterprise's The Crossing. These creatures, also non-corporeal, were capable of entering our reality and residing there in specialised starships or in biologically compatible hosts. Next layer down, we have the area that warp fields interact with, but of course a ship does not physically enter into this layer or anything, but it does leave a footprint, a subspace profile. Warp fields themselves are adaptable, and it's not a one-frequency-fits-all affair, so there is no definitive warp layer. And with how seldom being at warp affects subspace communications, it has to be running across a different level than most comms. It is in this layer that the occasional strange effects can be encountered, like a sandbar, a distortion so knotted that it strands a vessel upon it, even in real space. It is in these layers where space-time becomes way more malleable, but is still tethered to real space-time, hence the warp effect. It's also why different phenomena or warp drives can produce a variety of effects like accidental wormholes, time travel and more. Basically, this is the layer that sees the most use and abuse, frequently contorting it, utilising its effects on real space-time above it. It is this that gets eroded by poorly regulated warp drives, resulting in fissures. However, it is also home to life forms such as the photonic energy beings. It is also at the extreme depths of this layer that the first true subspace boundaries form. These are barriers that actually separate deeper subspace from interacting too much with normal space, and to get to them requires effort. Either technology or some phenomena can act to pierce or draw things into these layers. Beyond these boundaries are a myriad of potential demiplanes that can form. We only see one example that forms in canon. That is the one that Wesley accidentally traps his mother inside while running a warp core experiment. This mirrors the spacetime above it, but is heavily influenced by Person's thoughts. The version we saw was also unstable and already collapsing the moment it was created. Escaping it required the piercing of a separational boundary using traveller powers. So it's likely that such a realm created at this depth is unnatural, but spoiler, there exists deeper layers where this is the norm. All these different realms and layers can be visualised as either separate physical layers, overlapping areas at different frequencies, or, as Geordie says, a honeycomb-like structure. None are true, all are true, it's a metaphor. But then we have the layers where thought and reality blend. The subspace realm of Exosia lies down here. A realm where willpower alone can shape reality and matter is optional. This is the layer to which the being Suspira called home, and took her followers. It was strongly tied to their psychic abilities and the development of further powers in her and her people, who she could transport to and from her domain at will. It is an example where thought alone can shape reality, but unlike the earlier example, it is a stable existence. On a tangent, I wonder if the planet Meridian entered these areas of subspace when it shifted, as it was described as travelling to a dimension of pure thought. Subspace does have this strange relationship to thought and emotion, even in the upper layers, as certain empathic or telepathic events can be imprinted onto subspace and echo down over time, as seen in the TNG episode Eye of the Beholder. Below this, we have the beginnings of some truly strange realms and layers, some spanning the entire known galaxy. These realms are separated by interfold layers, areas between the outer edges and barriers of different subspace planes. The order of these is speculatory from here on out, as frankly things start getting strange. Stranger. We have those realms that are rather similar to our spacetime, like the Void, which consumed Voyager. This void was described as an inert subspace layer about 9 light-years across with absolutely nothing in it except a siphoning effect on energy reserves. The void occasionally generated apertures that extended up through the layers to real space-time, but their gravity acted to pull things in without allowing them to escape easily. Within this bubble, things were relatively normal, but it was literally a finite bubble. It could be that the whole thing, space included, was just a trapped pocket of real spacetime. Into the murkiest depths, we have the realms of subspace that contain entire ecosystems and other species, like the mycelial plane. It is a galaxy-wide ecosystem, the primary lifeform of which was Prototaxtes stellaviatori, a fungal growth postulated to be a delivery vector for life matter in the universe. It is a very stable layer, with its own sentient inhabitants, and seems to be filled with physical matter that can be interacted with. Life forms, such as the space tardigrade and the aforementioned fungus, can come and go from it, with spores of this strange realm drifting through subspace layers to settle colonies in real spacetime. It is through the existence of this layer that the connection to alternate universes was heavily alluded to, although that link was always present in prior Star Trek. The redacted spore drive allowed for traversal of this mycelial plane as a shortcut, and it's the first instance of a ship actually being taken out of regular space-time to make use of another realm. It's also accidentally discovered that it was possible to enter other actual timelines and parallel universes through this. Not the only method, but it's one. We also have the strange dimensions of the Solanogen life forms from schisms. These beings were alerted to the presence of the upper realms when deep scans from the USS Enterprise reached their depths in subspace and they traced the signals back. They began opening apertures to the real space above them and bringing abductees down to their layers to run experiments on. The harrowing affair led to Starfleet designating certain subspace band modifications to be avoided lest it draw their gaze once more. There are a whole bunch of other aliens that may or may not dwell in subspace layers, often referred to as extra-dimensional beings, but they could simply be just from another dimension beyond subspace, such as the Sphere Builders, the nucleogenic life forms, Species 8472, and the Venori. In summary, we can see that just as the shallowest layers are less impressive, they're commonly used in a myriad of technologies and are also home to more insubstantial energy beings and life forms. Below a murky line is a place where thought and matter mix, where willpower and emotion shape what is real as much as any fundamental laws. And as we go deeper still, the life forms and realms themselves become more tangible, with greater effects and bigger phenomena originating among them. It's almost like the deeper you go, the more real it becomes in a sense, as a subspace domain's own laws take precedence over our universe's physical ones. According to Star Trek's understanding of subspace, the quantity of these layers is infinite, and some incredibly bizarre findings have been made, like an entire proto-universe being accidentally fished out of a subspace layer in Deep Space Nine. Not to mention all the effects and strange phenomena that occur, but that deserves its own list. If you want some even more bizarre theorising that is even more speculatory, then you can look into a video I did a while ago that suggests subspace as being something that existed before the universe. Link at the end of the video. Until the next one, I've been Rick, and thank you for watching this exploration into the unknowable depths of the subspace realms. Until the next one, goodbye.